How to make Christian friends if you don't relate to Christians. I decided to title this podcast that way because when I first embraced my faith, it wasn't the first time I believed in Jesus, but when I first said my life is going to be all about Jesus, I went to church, I went to young adult groups, and I felt like I do not fit in. I do not relate to these people. I remember even a specific story where I went to a Christian club on my college and they were playing like high school kids games. And I mean, maybe they could have even been considered middle school kids games. And I was like, Jesus, I love you, but I hate this place. And that is a extreme example of feeling like you don't relate. But there was many times where I went to cool Christian groups, to cool young adult groups, and I just still didn't feel like I fit in. This podcast is not only going to tackle that issue of feeling like you can't relate to Christians, but you want to make more Christian friends. This podcast is going to tackle all friend problems for Christians. And I think that every friend problem for Christians, whether you're a lukewarm Christian or a serious Christian, can be summarized with this phrase. Lukewarm Christians don't have enough faith-filled friends to take their faith seriously, and serious Christians don't have enough secular friends to make an impact on the world. That is the whole premise of this podcast, and we're going to build upon it to help people who want to have more serious faith-filled friends and to help serious Christians who have made the mistake of having no secular friends. And just for context, I just told you about the beginning of my story when I first went to Christian clubs and I felt like I didn't fit in. Well, let me tell you a bit about the end of my story, or the recent part of my story. I went to a mission school in Germany, and these are kids my age. I am 24 years old, but people my age who have sold their entire life for Jesus. They're literally dropped everything, moved to Germany to live a life for Jesus. And I remember going around the mission school and asking people if they had secular friends. And so many of these people couldn't name a secular friend that they had. Completely sold out lives for Jesus, and yet zero secular friends. And that was the most mind-blowing thing to me, because imagine if Jesus was only friends with Christians. I mean, the irony of it is so funny because they're going to mission school to learn how to bring people to Jesus, and presumably the easiest way to bring people to Jesus is to be friends with people who don't know Jesus. And they have sold their whole life for him. Their Instagram bio has all these Bible verses. They moved to Germany to be fully committed to him, and then they don't have any secular friends. And I'm like, what? Isn't that the whole point? So on both sides of the spectrum, you've got these hilarious dichotomies. You got people who are watching Christian content and they want to identify as a Christian and they want to be this faith-filled follower. Maybe if they're a guy, they want to have a beautiful woman of God, and they want all these perks of Christianity. They want non-degenerate friends. They want a beautiful, pure wife, and then they don't have any Christian friends. So they expect to get all the perks of a Christian life and have no Christian friends, which is a hilarious contradiction. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have these sold out Christians who have given their whole lives to Jesus, and the whole point of their lives is to bring people to Jesus, and they have no secular friends, so they're not bringing any of their secular friends to Jesus. And it's like, what in the hilarious contradiction are we dealing with? This podcast is here to address that statement. So that is the introduction. Before I dive into the two remaining points, which is how do you make Christian friends as a or how do you make serious Christian friends as a lukewarm Christian, and how do you make secular friends as a serious Christian? That will be the remainder of the podcast. Before that, I want to tell you the ideal. The ideal is that our core friends should be on fire, diehard believers and followers of Jesus, and then we should have a number of secular friends outside of our core friends. Why is that the ideal? Because that's what Jesus did. Who were Jesus's core friends? the 12 apostles. Is there anyone more sold out for Jesus than the 12 apostles? I mean, maybe, but they're clearly in the top highest tier of being sold out for Jesus. So Jesus's core friends were the 12. Yet, he always made friends wherever he went. He would talk to prostitutes. He would talk to tax collectors, which, by the way, were people that Christians didn't like. Well, let me correct myself. They're not Christians. They weren't Christians because now they're called Christians because we're following Christ. But at the time, the religious people of Jesus's religion did not like tax collectors, did not like prostitutes. People that they would tell you in that religion don't be friends with, Jesus was friends with them. So Jesus's core friends were his followers, but then he would walk and he'd make friends with prostitutes, tax collectors. He would speak to the 5,000. He had all sorts of different depths of relationships with all sorts of unbelieving secular people. But his core influence was the 12 apostles. And it's funny saying core influence, like obviously they're not influencing God, God's influencing them. But Jesus lived a life to model the life that we should live. So we should look at his setup with his core friends being Christian and making secular friends everywhere he went as the ideal model for our lives. So let's get into it. Let's get into the first point, which is basically the title of this podcast. Lukewarm Christians don't have enough faith-filled friends to take their faith seriously. I really believe that statement when I say it. It might sound unfair to categorize all people who don't have faith-filled friends as lukewarm, and I do think there probably are some exceptions. There probably are some really strong believers who, I don't know, maybe live in Muslim countries or, yeah. I mean, it's very hard to think of exceptions to the rule. But there is maybe some people who aren't lukewarm Christians who don't have a lot of serious faith-filled friends. But the vast majority characteristic of a serious Christian is having faith-filled friends. So how do you have faith-filled friends as a lukewarm? How do you have faith-filled friends if you desire the perks of Christianity? And even better, how do you have faith-filled friends because you should just want to follow Jesus and have deeper intimacy with him and you want to live out the calling of the Bible? It comes down to three things, so simple. Number one, exist in Christian spaces. Number two, don't go looking for friends, be a friend. And number three, invite Christian friends into secular activities. So let's break them down one by one. Number one, exist in Christian spaces. People think this means go to church. Yes, it does mean go to church, but it shouldn't stop at church because the modern American church, it's very easy to go, learn, and leave. But you never make deep friendships by going, learning, and leaving. You make deep friendships by staying, loving, and repeating. I just came up with that on the fly. I hope you like that. I want to tell you a story. There's multiple young adult groups. And even for the context of this example, a young adult group is beyond church because church is just the Sunday meeting you clock into and you clock out of. Then some churches offer a young adult group, which is a young adult group is a more age-focused Christian gathering. So for me, I'm in the young adult age range, which is 18 to 25 or 30. And even when I go to the young adult group, it's a better step above church because it's more for people my age. I'm more likely to make friends there. But even there, I can go, learn, and leave. And what I've learned over years of going to young adult groups is the way to actually make friends there is to not actually attend the young adult group, but attend whatever gathering comes after the young adult group. So here in California, the most common thing is you go to the young adult group, and then after the young adult group, you go to In-N-Out. And at In-N-Out, you're not sitting through a lecture or doing a Bible study, so you're actually building a real friendship as you talk to these people who have faith. And then you can't just do that once. You got to do that like 10 times, and then you'll begin to make friends in your young adult group, which comes to a story I want to share because I think young adult groups, and I guess you could apply this to churches as well, if community is a goal, then they are poorly designed. Because with the church, you don't even have the option to go to In-N-Out afterwards. I mean, you can do it, but it's not like someone's organizing it. Then with young adult groups, someone usually organizes a hangout afterwards, but by the time you get to the hangout, you've already done an hour and a half of Bible study, an hour and a half of church. If you're a newer Christian, this is overwhelming and you don't really want to go another hour and a half hanging out at In-N-Out or whatever. And so the barrier to entry to make friends within the church system becomes very hard. I would say it's nearly impossible in the Sunday gathering. And then in the young adult weekly meeting, you have to commit like 3 hours to get to the part where you actually make friends and repeat that on a weekly basis. I learned something incredible. I just did a project for my ministry where we help creators use their lives and platforms for Jesus, where we shared the story of the cross through a secular YouTube video about my friend accomplishing his dream of drifting in Japan, which, by the way, if you're a creator, artist, or entrepreneur and you want to use your platform for Jesus, check out starsforever.co in the description below and we can work together on a project, or you can attend one of my events for creators, artists, and entrepreneurs to use their lives for Jesus. But that's a side point. The important point here is that we went to Japan to do a project for Jesus, and we were involved in this local church in Japan. And the way they ran their young adult groups is that because only 1% of the country is Christian, they knew inviting Japanese people to a Bible study or to a church lecture sermon is not actually going to build the bond of friendship that they need to get them to church or to get them to want to believe in Jesus. So what do? They have a weekly young adult meeting that's all about hanging out and making friends. It's not a Bible study. It's not a church lecture sermon. It's a place to make friends where everyone who is the core group there is faith-filled and they invite secular friends. I made deeper young adult friends in 1 month in Japan young adult group within this system than 4 years in multiple different young adult American systems. And the only difference was instead of making the focus a Bible study or a sermon, the focus was love and friendship. Now, I don't know how that makes you feel. I want to be clear. I love learning. I'm a sermon head. I love Bible studies. I do a Bible study every morning. I go to church on Sunday. I take notes. I even listen to sermons during the week, Christian podcasts. I love learning. With that being said, we are not in a lack of learning culture. You can learn as you please. You can go on YouTube and access the best Bible teachers in the world with a click of a finger. We are in an absolute community deficit. We are in a loneliness epidemic and a community deficit that is causing it. We are not in a learning deficit, and we have an abundance of content, and that's why we're not in a learning deficit. Designing churches, I mean, this podcast is not about designing churches, but to call out the churches and young adult groups, we really should have a place that's not learning focused, but is love and community focused. All of this is just summarizing my first point of how to make serious faith-filled friends as a lukewarm Christian. And it comes down to existing in Christian spaces. And I just did this whole long drawn out explanation of church and young adult groups to tell you, exist in Christian spaces that aren't churches and young adult groups. Get together with Christians at restaurants, go to conferences. I've made some of my best friends at conferences, work on Christian projects together, get involved in volunteering, exist in Christian spaces beyond church, and even better, beyond young adult groups. Which leads me to my second point, which is don't go looking for a friend, go to be a friend. I can't even tell you, I said it at the beginning of this podcast, but how uncomfortable I felt around Christians when I first took my faith seriously. I felt like I was this YouTube entrepreneur, ambitious guy, and I'm around all these weirdo, like playing high school games in college groups. Like, this can't be your true personality. What am I doing here? And so what would happen is I would try to find like a gem of a person. Like, okay, I understand this group is really weird, but I'll find the one cool guy and, I'll just stick to them. That didn't work, and that's not how God wants us to see people. There's a quote, I don't know who it's by, but it says, if you go looking for friends, you'll find them nowhere. But if you go to be a friend, you'll find them everywhere. Jesus, at least my interpretation of his life through the New Testament, was not going trying to find friends. Jesus tries to find lost souls, and he does so by being a friend to everyone. He is a friend. He gives, he doesn't ask. Truly, I tell you, it is better to give than to receive. When God says it's better to give than to receive in the Bible, how does that apply to friends? Truly, I tell you, it's better to be a friend than to look for friends. And Matthew 5:46 through 47, it says, if you are only kind to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even the pagans do that. If you only love those who love you, how are you different from anyone else? Even the pagans do that. Do you realize Adolf Hitler, who killed 6 million Jews, was probably homies with his Nazi friends. They probably had a great time doing Nazi things, hanging out. Adolf Hitler had friends, I bet. I mean, I guess I can't say that affirmatively, but he probably had friends. And Joseph Stalin and Kim Jong-un in North Korea probably have friends. The worst people on earth are friends with people who share the ideals and power that they have. So why should I ever take after the worst people on earth, go to a church group, meet people who aren't like me, ignore them, and then embrace all the friendships that are exactly like me? Like, that's kind of pathetic. You're basically, I'm not saying you are Hitler. Obviously, you're not Hitler. You're not Kim Jong-un. You're not doing the terrible atrocities. But your friendship model is no different from the worst people on earth. If you go to a church and all you do is make friends with everyone who's exactly like you, your friendship model is no worse than the worst people on earth. And that's convicting for me. To this day, that is convicting for me. So I'm not calling you out. I'm calling myself out. And I'm calling you out, but more so myself, because I don't know where you stand on this. And so, how do you do the Jesus model? Matthew 5:46 through 47. You love those who don't love you, and you are kind to those who you don't want to be kind to. You find weird people, weird Christians. You accept that they're not like you. You don't have to be friends with every weird Christian you meet. You don't have to go on some escapade to find the weirdest guy you can find at your church and be friends with them. But you should begin to ask God, help me to see these people how you see them. Help me not to see them within my friendship standards, but help me to love them for who they are. And the good thing about this is if you see them through, they need to live up to my friendship standard, then you're going to be projecting the world's identity on them. You're going to be subconsciously telling them, you're not cool enough. You're not good enough. And guess who does that? The enemy, Satan. He's the accuser, the father of lies. When you pick friendships like, they need to live up to my standard, you're basically speaking the world's identity over someone. But when you go to someone and you say, okay, maybe we don't have the same interest. Maybe I don't resonate with them, but I'm going to try to be kind to them and love them anyways. And then God transforms your heart and sight. Something that happens to me is I will literally meet characters who are so different from me, and I'll just laugh. And I'm not laughing at them being a character. I'll be laughing with joy at God's creation for making someone so unique. I'll be like, God, this guy's amazing. He's so different and funny. And thank you for letting me meet him and be his friend. And you get to speak God's identity over people. You get to serve people and love them. And I believe you'll be rewarded in eternity for that kind of behavior. So don't go looking for friends, go to be a friend. So let's summarize those first 2 points. Point number 1, exist in Christian spaces beyond church. Point number 2, don't go looking for friends, be a friend. And point number 3, invite serious Christians into secular activities. This is kind of similar to point number 1, but you want real friendships. If you're a lukewarm believer and you made your real friendships through your football team or through your fraternity in college or through this class, and then you go somewhere where you've never made friends like church and you expect to make deep friendships, you're probably not going to. So what do? You invite the church people into the places that you make deep friendships. Hey, do you want to join this local basketball team? Now you're in a non-church context with serious Christians, and you get to see how serious Christians live out their serious faith in a secular context. That's something that I try to do on my Stars Forever projects. I work with a creator to share Jesus to a secular audience. So for example, I took Owen to accomplish his childhood dream of drifting in Japan, and we're telling the story of Jesus through this secular YouTube video. And the whole time we're inviting secular people we meet into the process. Oh, you want to come drifting with us? Oh, you want to come to this restaurant with us? Oh, we're going to be editing the video in this coffee shop. Do you want to come to the coffee shop? Oh, your dad has a coffee shop? We'll join you. And we do invite those people into church spaces. Well, now I'm talking about making secular friends, but the point is, I'm actually getting ahead to a preview on the next point, but the thing I'm trying to say is invite serious Christians into secular activities and you will make way deeper, serious, faith-filled friends, and you will also learn how to live out your faith outside of a church context. So that is the 3 points for how to make faith-filled friends if you're a lukewarm Christian. And now we're going to cover the 3 points of how to make secular friends if you're a serious Christian. And spoiler alert, maybe you read it on the screen. It's basically just the same thing, but with the variable substituted. So how to make secular friends if you're a serious Christian. And this should be a big concern. If you're a serious Christian and your whole life you want to use for Jesus and you have no impact on the world, or your only impact comes from telling people about Jesus and dipping. And obviously there's so many people in our day-to-day lives will tell about Jesus and we're not going to build deep friendships with them. And that's so great. And God's going to reward us for that. And you can help people know Jesus through quick interactions. But if you have no secular friends whatsoever, you should be questioning yourself. And here it is. It's so simple. It's basically the same 3-point formula. How to make secular friends as a serious Christian. 1, exist in secular spaces. Instead of going beyond church, because secular spaces are not church, you exist in secular spaces in a weekly or monthly routine. So you can't just go to one secular event once a year and expect to have secular friends. You want to go to secular spaces that are weekly, preferably, or at least monthly. So maybe for me, I try to go to creator events. I'm a YouTuber. I have a vlog channel that's not a Jesus vlog, and I try to go to secular creator events. My job is YouTube strategy. I work for a YouTube strategist, and through the YouTube strategy work I do, I get to work with secular creators. I'm doing that every week, or I will be doing that every week. Maybe you play pickleball, basketball, any sports pickup league. Do it every week. You will make secular friends. You have a hobby. You like to play chess. Outside of games, you can do art. You can attend conferences. But you want to exist in secular spaces, and preferably secular spaces that repeat weekly or monthly. The second point, I don't have to harp on because it's exactly the same as the last second point. Don't go looking for friends, go to be a friend. The same way lukewarm Christians can judge faith-filled Christians and see them as weird is the same thing that serious Christians do to secular people. You see a secular guy and he starts talking about how he wants to meet girls at the club and hook up with them. And you're like, oh my gosh, what in the heathen? I can't be friends with this guy. It's like, bro, they're secular. They don't believe in God. What do you expect from them? They're not going to be like, actually, I'm looking to save myself for marriage. So you have to know, you have to have the wisdom If I'm going to be friends with this secular person, I'm not going to attend bars and clubs with them. Or if I'm going to attend bars and clubs, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to hit on girls. I'm not going to drink alcohol. I have so many friends who live for the weekend, who live for hooking up with girls, and they know I'm a serious follower of Jesus. They know I won't drink with them. They know I will not sleep with girls before marriage going forward. They know my values and they respect me. And guess what? Because they know my values, they hang out with me in places that align with my values. I have a friend that goes to the gym with me. He's a Lady Slayer club goer weekend guy, but he doesn't invite me to the Lady Slayer club going weekend stuff. He invites me to the gym and to the sauna, and I invite him to church, and he comes sometimes, and he knows my values. But I'm not shocked that he has these secular traits that might be unappealing to me. I'm not shocked when I meet secular people and they want to drink. So you can't, Matthew 7:2, for in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. You can't just go to secular people, expect them to have Christian values, and then when they don't have them, be like, this guy's weird or uncomfortable, I'm not going to be their friend. It's literally the same thing for lukewarm Christians who want to make serious Christian friends and for serious Christians who want to make secular friends. You don't go looking for friends, you go to be a friend, and you pray, you ask God, how do you see this person? Because when you meet someone who is a lady slayer, who is a Olympic alcohol drinker, who doesn't have the moral values as you, and you begin labeling them in your head, that is not how God sees them. God knows the flaws that they have. God knows the sin in their life, but that's not who God made them to be. God made each person to be a world changer, and he has a specific identity for each person, and it's not Olympic alcohol drinker. It's not lady chaser on the club on Saturday nights. So when you see someone and then you choose not to be their friend because they're a lady slayer or Olympic alcohol drinker, what you are doing is you're casting the world's identity on them. That's who they think they are because the world is lying to them, and you're affirming that by not being their friend because of that. And if you want to speak God's truth and life to that person, what you will do is you'll ask God how he sees them, and you'll speak their God-given identity to them, and you'll help them find their God-given identity. Which, if you want to see a different episode on how to help someone find their God-given identity or how to find it yourself, comment below, go vote on the next video in the description. I have a poll to vote on the next video in the description below. So if that's something you want to see, let me know, we'll make it. I'm hoping by now you can see the parallels between the two friend problems, the lukewarm friend problem and the serious Christian friend problem, parallel solutions. Exist in secular spaces, number one. Number two, don't go to find friends, be a friend. And number three, it's literally the opposite of the last number three. Invite secular friends into Christian spaces. I told you a story earlier. I have a lady slayer friend. He respects my values. He comes to church with me. I told you the example when we were in Tokyo drifting. After we did the drifting video, we needed to edit all day. We didn't lock ourselves in our room to edit. We didn't go to a secular cafe and just sit in the corner alone. What we did is we went to our secular friend's cafe and we sat with him and we hung out with him while we're editing the thing that we're editing. And he knows the thing is promoting Christianity. We invite secular people we met on colleges in Japan to come to our young adult group. When we meet secular people, we don't assume that they have no interest in God. In fact, we assume that every single person we meet is on a spiritual journey. If they're trying to fulfill it by sleeping with strangers or doing drugs, they're on a spiritual journey, and therefore a spiritual atmosphere of the living true God would appeal to them. So we just invite them. If they don't want to come, it's okay. There's another guy at my gym who is interested in faith, and I've invited him to church probably 12 times, and he said no every time. A couple times he's like, oh, I'm going to come, and then he bails, and it's fine. I'm not judging him. He's a secular person. I understand this might happen, but I keep inviting him. And what I'm actually thinking is, he doesn't want to go to church, but he's interested in God. Maybe I invite him to the sauna Bible study. Maybe I invite him to just hang out. Maybe I invite him to talk about God with me in my car while we get food. Invite secular friends into Christian environments. That's the podcast. I hope it makes sense. I'm going to run through everything one more time. I'm going to put this graphic up on screen so you can save it. Maybe I'll put it in the description so you can download it. I'm not sure. Check the description if I did that. But friend problems for Christians. There's two problems with one ideal. The first problem, lukewarm Christians don't have enough faith-filled friends to take their faith seriously. The second problem, serious Christians don't have enough secular friends to make an impact. The ideal is that core friends should be faith-filled, strong Christians, but all Christians should have secular friends. How do you do that? Well, if you're a lukewarm, then you need to exist in Christian spaces. You need to go beyond church. You need to not look for friends, but be a friend, and you need to invite serious Christian friends into secular activities. If you're a serious Christian and you don't have enough secular friends, you need to exist in secular spaces, should be repeatable weekly or monthly. You need to, again, not look for friends, but be a friend, and you need to invite secular friends into Christian activities. That's the podcast. I'm going to pray for you all. God, thank you for this episode. I know it might have been wordy. I pray that these words, that you would speak through them and that you'd put your power into my listeners' lives, God. I pray that anyone who's experienced loneliness or dissatisfaction with friendship would have a completely new paradigm that gives them hope and light and life, God. I pray that you would help each person listening to this podcast to make the friends that they need, God, that you would divinely provide those connections, God. I know as much strategy as I can give them, you are the ultimate decider. You're the ultimate giver of wonderful friendships. And God, I should have mentioned the most important point is that they pray and ask you for the friends that they need. Would every single person listening to this podcast pray and ask you for the friends they need? God, I pray that any misinformation that doesn't align with your character or your word, that you would just make my viewers forget it. And I pray that anything that aligns with your character and word, that you'd help it to sit on my listeners' heart. God, thank you for the opportunity to film this episode. I just pray that you'd bless everyone listening to this and that they would go forth and take their faith more seriously in the form of friendships. In Jesus' name, amen.